Hi, I'm Bill Doherty, and I want to welcome the viewers to another edition of Bill's Bullpen. Bill's Bullpen is a program that's designed to let people know what's going on here, both in Bourne and also in Cape Cod. And with me today is a really old friend, Molly Perdue. Molly, what are you up to?
Oh, Bill, it's so good to see you again. It's been a while.
It has been.
Yeah, so what I'm up to is we're running the Alzheimer's Family Support Center on Cape Cod, and we're helping probably at a minimum 1,000 people a month that are in our care or in our service in some way. So we're doing all sorts of things, from having drop-off programs so caregivers can take a break and we can spend some time with people that have cognitive loss and find ways to increase meaning and purpose in their lives, to educating caregivers, to providing memory screens for people so they can start that conversation with their doctor about, they're not able to do the same things that they used to do, and should they worry, should they not worry. So we're trying to be a community resource. Everything we do is free, there's no charge. So we're able to kind of take these best practices that used to exist only in research centers across the country and put them into play on Cape Cod and over the bridge in Plymouth.
Well, one of the first questions that comes to mind, because I went through, my sister and I went through the process with my mother. My grandmother actually was, many years ago, there was she was exercising a lot of belligerence, which we discovered was part of the process, let's say, of identifying and diagnosing, what was going on.
Right.
And we couldn't get her into a nursing home because she was so belligerent. And she ended up at what was the Holy Ghost Hospital in Cambridge, but became Uville.
Oh, wow.
Which was a which was a service thing. So we had that, and my sister was deathly afraid of contracting it. Sadly, she had lymph node cancer, and there's always something else that that you worry about.
Right.
And certainly, when we were trying to give care to to our mother, we found that there were programs at McLean's that I guess this is part of the early research, where they could arrest the progress of the disease, but they couldn't reverse it,
right.
And it needed reversal. Now, the question comes up, how do you bring up, and this is what the viewers might be interested in, how do you bring up, let's say, the differentiation between what I would call senior moments and, let's say, the onslaught of, this kind of a problem?
Yeah, so things change as you get older, and that's normal aging. And then there's accelerated loss, where, you start to lose functionality in your everyday living. And now what's interesting about research is that they're talking about modifiable risk factors for dementia. And this is something that has been, bantied around in Europe, and now the National Institute of Health is starting to put out some publications about modifiable risk factors. And I think this is important information, because we don't think about cognitive health in the same way we think about heart health. Yet these systems are all interrelated. So modifiable risk factors mean taking care of your cardiovascular health, making sure that if you have sleep apnea and you're not sleeping, you go and you deal with it. And maybe if you have to wear a CPAP so you can get some oxygen to your brain, you're doing that. Or if you're sedentary, and we know that the majority of Americans over the age of 65, they're not out there walking in their neighborhoods, Bill, they're sitting. And exercise is so critical to longevity. And it's not only critical for your body's health, it's critical for your cognitive health. So there's a lot of things that people can do to start to reduce some of their risk for dementia. It doesn't mean there's a cure yet, because there isn't. But that means that we do have some responsibility in thinking about cognitive health and trying to take care of it. And one really important factor as you get older, and this is also true if you even have an accelerated decline, is community. So what we learned from the COVID-19 pandemic is that when people were isolated, they did not do so well. So in other words, when you talk about dementia behaviors that come with an accelerated loss in a more severe state of the disease, they found that people that were already diagnosed, and there was a study that came out of France during their lockdown, that there was an increase in behaviors in people that were diagnosed with a dementia. And they also have found that there was a decrease in overall health profile. And this is something that Vivek Murthy, our Surgeon General, started to focus on even during, I would say right before the COVID pandemic, is how do we increase our social ties? We know it affected the youth, but we also know that it affected people that were at the other end of the spectrum. So I think, how do you know the difference? Well, the one example that everybody tells, it's not where did I put my keys, is do you find your keys in your ice box? Like how did you end up there? Or, so there are ways, there are all these pieces to our cognition. Memory is one part of it, so that you want to try and stay cognitively stimulated as long as you can. And even if you have an accelerated decline, that cognitive piece, that community piece can make a big difference.
Well, again, how do you bring this up to, I have an annual physical, and after the initial evaluation, when I go to the physical,
Right.
I get a lot of smiles, and how's everything going? And then instead of having a half hour or an hour visit, it's more like about 15 minutes,
Yeah.
and I got somebody else out there. Okay, so how do you bring this up in a way that doesn't, let's say, doesn't appear to be not self-serving, but hypochondriac type of thing?
Right.
Because my sister was deathly worried
Yeah.
about my grandmother and my mother had it, so she was deathly afraid that she would end up with it.
Yeah.
But how do you bring it up in a way to get what I'd call a sensible answer, not being dismissed, with regard to it?
Absolutely. Because it seems like a lot of people, they get one or the other, right? So either you're fine, don't worry about it, or there's no talk because you're so scared that you don't want to talk about what's going on with your cognition. And what I would say to all the people that watch your show is that your cognitive health is the canary in the coal mine. And in 20% of cases, there can be something else. There can be, hopefully not a brain tumor, or not, undiagnosed diabetes or cardiovascular disease that isn't being treated, high blood pressure, all sorts of things, hypothyroidism, B12 deficiencies, clinical depression. All these things can affect cognition, and clearly those aren't dementias. Those aren't progressive dementias. And so we have to start being more courageous and having those conversations. So, we know our own cognitive health better than anybody else. If you've always remembered everybody's name, and all of a sudden you can't remember anyone's, right?
Forgive me, Molly. I was in sales and used to train salesmen, and I couldn't remember names to save my life.
So that is not an indicator for you.
Right.
Right? Because you never did names.
Yeah.
Well,
As a matter of fact, I used to take pictures whenever I traveled, and I would include the people I was calling on. And then when I got home, I would set up a scrapbook and put their names underneath it. So the next time I went out there, I would at least have some crutch in order to get through it.
And this is why it's so complex, right? Because some of us, our cognition is never completely stable, and it's never the same. Some of us are stronger in other areas, as we know. But we know, right? We know when we are starting to see some type of accelerated decline. And so having that confidential communication with your doctor is probably very important. And, I was reading when I was working on my PhD, and I was going through all the literature. You have to sift through so much literature, it's insane.
You're also slave labor for the department.
It's true. And in the New England Journal of Medicine, there was an article that was like the reversal of Alzheimer's. I think that was the title. And I'm like, oh my God, I got to read this. And it was a doctor that had 3 cases. So, it was anecdotal. It was his case studies. And he was talking about a guy that came in to see him. He gave him a mini mental. He didn't do so well. And he said, oh, you better go home and get your life in order because, your mini mental doesn't look good here. And the man left, came back, for his next visit 6 months, a year later, and he gave him the same mini mental, and he scored higher. And he said to the guy, "What did you do?" And he's like, "Doc, you scared me to death. I started exercising, I changed my diet." So, he did all these things. And, it doesn't mean there's no cure for a dementia once you have it, but it does mean that there are modifiable factors that we have some ability, to touch on by taking care of our health earlier. And so I think that case study to me was really informative. It's like, wow, we don't have a cure, but that doesn't mean that we don't pay attention to what we're putting in our mouth, or, we don't pay attention to, our numbers of our blood sugar or our cardiovascular numbers. We have to pay attention to all this. And a neuroscientist, Lisa Genova, that wrote the book Still Alice, when she lectures, she talks about risk for Alzheimer's like the hands on a clock. And she says, okay, we're all at 12 o'clock. Well, your mother had it, so you have a maternal link. Well, you're genetically probably similar. You probably ate the same foods. You had the same. So you just increased your risk, maybe 5%. Okay, your father had it. Now you've increased your risk a little more. You were never a person that liked to move much, so you're pretty sedentary. You're getting older, you've increased your risk. You really like those, sugary foods. You've never really thought about a heart healthy diet. Now you've got an increased risk. And I thought that was such a smart way to help people understand that we have risk. The genetic risk for people that are clinically diagnosed with a familial Alzheimer's, very slight percentage, something like 2% of the 5.6 million people in our country that have it, or 130,000 people in our state that are diagnosed. So what you're talking about is that some of the ways we end up with Alzheimer's is we age, right? Age is the number one.
You're in the you're in the county, Barnstable County. That's the oldest county in Massachusetts,
Exactly.
and arguably the oldest county before you get to God's waiting room down in Florida.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So we know, this is one of the reasons why we got things started here. We know there's a lot of retirees. We know that a lot of people come here because the environment is so beautiful. There's great places to go. And we wanted to be able to help those families and help people get the services they need that are based on what we know is helpful. And so that's what we were able to do. Co-founding an organization that actually provides help it's the best job in the universe.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
So how did all this get started?
Yeah. So I had, I got a phone call from my mother when I was working on my PhD. She was starting to fail in Florida. So what really happened is she had gout, and she would forget she had gout. She would run out of her medication. She couldn't walk. She would call me up, and it became apparent that, wow, she was completely forgetting the fact that she had this other issue, and she couldn't manage it. So what happens usually for most caregivers, and this happened for me, is my mother couldn't manage her life. And so I said, why don't you come up to Cape Cod? And so we brought her up here. And she lived with me while we were starting our family. I had 2 young sons, and she was
I didn't know that.
progressing. Yeah.
Oh, good. Congratulations.
Yeah,
That's wonderful.
my partner and I adopted 2 boys.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, one's in college now. One is, this is how long it's been since we've talked. The other is at Sturgis. He's a senior. And so we were able to kind of help her.
Yeah.
And while we were helping her, I'm looking at the research. And back then, there wasn't a lot out there about Alzheimer's. There was a smattering of studies. There was New York University did a lot. And so my actual research was looking at people living on Cape Cod that were dealing with dementia. And so I was able to see, wow, there's a lot missing. And I know there's a lot missing because when I go home, my mother's looking out at Cape Cod Bay, seeing those buoys are women drowning. And could I please call the police? Because she, as she went into a more advanced state, there can be, different dementias that are more colorful than others. And they require us to acquire a certain skill set. And, you know, as I was trying to help her, I was realizing there's so much that caregivers need to know to be able to reduce their stress and to do this as well as they could. Because what can happen for a caregiver, which is what I experienced and I know so many others do, is that you so don't know what to do next because it felt like there wasn't anybody out there helping you, that you were going by the seat of your pants all the time.
And that's what a support group does.
Yeah.
Because my wife was the president of the AMI, the AMI support.
Right.
Let's see, NAMI support group on Cape Cod.
That's great.
And one of the things that that we learned was that there are many things that we learned because of direct personal experience, and you wonder how is there a way to help other people when when you sort of got to the point where things stabilize and you can do something. And you've found that opportunity to do that.
Well, you know, it just happened. Like I don't even know how to describe it, except that I kept thinking there has to be something, out there. And I can remember getting at this moment where I was taking my mother to every meeting I went to because I couldn't leave her home anymore. And then I had read about Sandra Day O'Connor, in the Supreme Court, and how she would have to take her husband to chambers. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, oh, I get that, because there was my mom sitting there while I was at a meeting. So I think that there's a lot that we learn as we're going along, and it just happened to come at a time where I was trying to finish a PhD, which, law policy and society at Northeastern University was, okay, what is going to be your contribution to this area of research? What is going to be unique in what you're offering that no one else has offered? Mm-hmm. And so the center grew out of that body of knowledge. It grew out of how do we take a pragmatic approach and try to say, all right, here are some of the best practices. Let's concretely take them out of the research labs. Let's make them community-based, put them into action, have them work like a symphony with each other to provide as much help as a family, would garner. So if you're a person that you don't like sitting in a classroom learning, you don't have to take the educational piece of what we do. Maybe you like the more interactive approach and you're in a support group. Or maybe that's not for you, but you're okay coming to the mall, because we now have a center at the mall. I don't know if you know this.
No, I don't do much shopping these days.
We just got recognized by a national caregiving institute for our innovation, because we went into the Cape Cod Mall because we know all roads lead there. We know how fragmented transportation is on Cape Cod. It's hard to get everywhere.
Excuse me, Tommy Cahere and I did a lot to make, to organize that. The extension of that. And,
you did a great job.
Yeah,
because they all come to the mall.
Yeah.
All your buses from everywhere. Now, we can have people being dropped off, coming into our service. They don't have to have a car. They don't have to drive to come see us.
And that is so important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we just keep building these community structures that are so critical, so that people, all they have to do is pick up the telephone, or all they have to do is
that's just it. People don't even know that they can pick up the telephone and and get some support and assistance. Right. So how do they get in touch with you people?
Well, here we are. I don't know what your reach is, but I think we're at the place of trying to get we've built enough infrastructure in what we do. Mm-hmm. We're trying to get the word out. I mean, we're in Falmouth. We're at the Bourne COA. We do support groups right here in Bourne. I mean, we do things all over the Cape inside some of these structures. Mm-hmm. Where we've grown so much is that we have the center at the mall that can give anyone a 2 to 3 hour respite. So instead of having to hire a home health aide or go, how am I gonna trust somebody with my person? You can sign up at the mall, bring your person there. Maybe you want to go to Target or you want to go shopping at Macy's, and you can check in and kind of see what we're doing. So we've created this very easy way for people to be able to participate in whatever way they want to, that they feel comfortable, and yet get some support so they're not out there by themselves.
Well, I know the burnout thing is very critical.
Yeah.
Because you can only take so much of, let's say, of being isolated and taking care of somebody, and just have the sense of hopelessness that that goes with that. And since it is a chronic illness, and in this culture does not appreciate chronic illnesses,
Right.
because what they figure is, well, you've been sick long enough. Okay, it's time to get better. And I've heard things like, well, if you only did this, if you only did that. Well, those of us who have been dealing with any kind of chronic illness know better.
Yeah.
Than suggest those kinds of issues. Okay, so if someone wanted to join your organization, what would they do?
They could pick up the phone and call 508-896-5170. They could go onto our website, alzfamily.org. It's so easy to get in touch with us. And once you send us an email, give us a phone call, we do an intake, we try to find out what is it that you'd like. We have phone support, we have in-person support, we have online support. We have 3 offices now. We have an administrative office on Main Street in Brewster. We have a office where we do social engagement on the Harwich-Brewster line, and then we're at the Cape Cod Mall, and we're actually moving.
What street is that on?
Which one?
The Harwich-Brewster line.
137.
130. Okay, that's the next. Let's see. I lived on 124.
Okay.
So that's the next one down. Yeah.
And we're in almost every town in some capacity. We're at the Falmouth Arts Center. We have a art program for people. They can come with their person with cognitive loss. They can do ceramics. We're at the Cape Cod Museum of Art. Every Monday, we're doing programs in combination in partnership with the Cape Cod Museum of Art.
That's in Dennis.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So we do a lot. We do a lot at a lot of different places, and as long as there's a need in our community, we're going to keep growing our programming. And
so, how do you sign up to be part of your organization? I'm not talking necessarily about somebody that has a kid, is a caregiver, but somebody just wants to, let's say, to help out.
So a couple of our greatest programs, we do 2 walks a year. And we have one coming up at Scusset Beach, May 18th.
May 18th.
May
okay.
18th. And I'd love to have you volunteer if you want to come down. We bring in volunteers. We have Mass Maritime students come and help us out. We have people that come from all over. We have all sorts of folks that show up to help us. And we do a walk, but we're a dementia-friendly organization. So when we do a walk, it's not like we're getting you up at the crack of dawn. If you don't donate, you don't get to walk. We say, come and check us out. Come and meet our team. Come and find out who we are as far as, how our nonprofit is situated within our community. Come eat a burger or eat a plant-based sandwich if you're not into burgers, because we have the X Grill that comes. The walk is named in honor of Dave Burtwell, who was a veteran. So we try to have a large veteran population for the Scusset Beach.
And indeed you should.
Right.
I mean, I'm involved with a lot of veteran activity, and the Alzheimer's piece is one that is certainly can be connected to PTSD.
Yes.
Because of the fear that that's involved with it. And I would love to come to the walk, except that I'm already committed to be a delegate for the Knights of Columbus for the state convention on the same date. So I do have a
next year.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because Barbara Ann Foley, who works for the Veterans Outreach, Dave Burtwell was her father. So the walk is in So it's a partnership.
Barbara was another one of the gang.
Yes.
Yeah. And she's doing a wonderful job with the veterans.
She's doing an amazing job.
Oh yeah, and she's made such a large contribution to that activity.
She's incredible.
Wonderful.
So we partner for this walk, and what's great about it is that any of the food that we have left over goes to the Veterans Outreach Center. So it's kind of this lovely way of getting everybody out in the community and raising funds for free services for Alzheimer's and making sure that everyone has a great time. We have the sound dunes, they're there. We have a band playing, we have dancing. It's just it's a beautiful community event.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Now, when you mentioned the Veterans Outreach Center, you should know the one in Sandwich at least has not only food but also clothing.
Oh, great.
Okay, so any veteran, should take advantage of it. You just show up with your DD 214 in order to qualify as a veteran. There's also some move. let's say for other kinds of support. And I can't help but believe that the fact that you have organizations that somehow need to be integrated together, and I wonder if that would be something that you would look at as far as...
It's so important, I think that we're moving away from this kind of siloed world.
Well, that's the
right?
thing that has, all the time in public life, it really bugged me that you would have all this overlap. Well, we can do that so much better than everybody else.
Right.
But the thing is, you all have to be integrated together because, as it says, we're all on a path to heaven, right? Okay, so if you're on a parallel path, perhaps you would be stronger if you joined with another organization that was moving in the same direction. You
are stronger.
Okay, so you might have your ego affected because you're not the prime mover, but you can be involved and actually accomplish something that would be really useful and great for let's say for the population that that you're trying to do something for. But at the end of the day, I think we have to remember that your physical appearance is not a guide to what I'd call emotional or let's say, or anything to do with wellness. There's a lot more to it. Now, believe it or not, we're almost at the end of this. So
what I wanted to say to what you just said is that I don't know if you know our tagline, but our tagline is, until there's a cure, there's community. And I believe that is really true. And I think the one thing that we have to learn is that, if right now something major happened on Cape Cod, we would be running around trying to help each other. We wouldn't be worried about what somebody looked like, or if someone voted the same way that we did, or if someone, went to the same church as I did. We would be trying to come together. And it's actually a sociological factor, that people do this. And they have found this with different calamities that have happened across time. And I think that Alzheimer's is one of those things where it can bring us together in the sense that there is more that we have in common than we have as far as our differences.
Well, we have a lot to learn from our differences, and I keep emphasizing that over and over again.
Yes.
It's because if you were surrounded by people that thought the same way you did and acted the same way you did, you'd never have any increase in what
you never grow,
you were. You never grow. Okay, so with that, do you have any final takeaway?
I would invite everyone in Bourne to come down to the walk on May 18th. Check it out. Come have a burger, have a tofu dog. It goes from 11 until 2. Take a walk, because we stroll down the canal. That's our walk. We have golf carts just in case you got a little over exuberant and you can't make the walk. And if you don't want to walk, or you want us to, hang out with and listen to music and dance, we have that too. So it's a great community event, and everybody's invited.
Okay, and with that, I want to thank the viewers for finding out more about what's available to help you if you are dealing with either Alzheimer's yourself, or somebody that that needs to get in contact with somebody that will help, because you're not alone. A lot of us, including myself, have been involved with it, and I thank Molly Perdue, the director or co-director, is it?
Co-founder, executive director.
Oh, wow. Okay. Of the Alzheimer's Family Support Organization. Thank you very much for watching, and this has been a production of Bourne TV.